Welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical, skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joining me is Iram Ramstein. Welcome.
Welcome.
Listen to much Ramstein at all?
No.
German metal band. Never mind.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Awesome. We've survived yet another general election, and it was a strange one. It was one in which nobody seemed to win. Really?
Because Labour are celebrating,
yes,
as though they did win.
This is, you know what's funny? I got some messages of people saying, Corbyn's won, you wanker, kind of attitude. And I'm like, you do understand how numbers work. So yeah, some people were genuinely treating that as if it was a Corbyn victory, which is very strange. I think what happened is Corbyn deserves some credit because he did a lot better than expected. The only issue is expectations were so low that this probably does feel like a victory to him and his party.
I was just going to say that the bar was set so incredibly low, and people were saying that Labour would, be obliterated at the ballot box and they would get no seats. That, they did exceed those already horrendously low expectations that I guess in their heads they did win.
Yeah, so basically they was expected to lose really, really badly, and instead they just lost. So, happy days. But I suppose, in a way, I've been very, very critical of Corbyn. Don't like the guy, Iram. Don't like him.
Really? I mean, you hid it well,
yeah,
I think.
All the opinion polls said that they'd lose by a landslide, and the main reason given time and time again was how he's unelectable, and, his general... the way he comes across to the public was the number one sticking point for many people outside of Labour and people who defected. But I think he does deserve credit. His campaigning was pretty impressive in the run-up to the election. He just seemed to become a different person. I always found him really, charismaless. Is that a word?
I think they're all charismaless.
Yes.
Hashtag. I don't know if that is.
It is now.
They were without charisma.
Oxford Dictionary.
Charismatically challenged.
Charismatic. I mean, yeah, Theresa May as well. There's a lot made about her in the press, how she's robotic. They refer to her as Maybot. Strong and stable, strong and stable, strong and stable. That's all we heard from her. A really lacklustre campaigning effort from her. But they scraped it. And I think... Corbyn, I think what happened is... a really poor campaigning effort by the Conservatives mixed with the fact that they pissed off their core voter with the whole inheritance tax issue. And I think Jeremy Corbyn did something that I don't think any politician's been able to do really, and that's energise the young into getting out and voting. And that's what made it seem like there was something different going on, something positive. But at the end of the day, it's a Tory government still, albeit a weakened one, in partnership with the DUP. Your thoughts on these guys? Did you have to Google them? Be honest, I had to Google them.
I had to Google them at first, and I wasn't really impressed. They are socially very, very conservative. They don't believe in abortion rights, do they? So, yeah, she's really scraping the barrel there. But everyone else had pretty much ruled out a coalition government. The Lib Dems definitely did that straight away. Not that they even stood a chance of being in a coalition government this time around. It was pretty much a two-party race this time. It was between Labour and the Conservatives. And yes, you have to give Corbyn some credit for not doing worse than he did, but yes, he did.
Well done for not being really fucking awful, Corbyn. Congratulations at the not being fucking awful awards.
There's so many people now who've changed their tune, and the most nauseating one had to be Owen Jones, who, after saying, a good few months ago that Corbyn can't be leader and, he won't win, but I'll still support him anyway, but he won't win, but yes, but no. Now he's saying, oh, you know what? This man is Prime Minister material, and I'm so sorry I believed in these opinion polls and right-wing media, blah, blah, blah. If in doubt, blame right-wing media.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's shown that the right-wing media nonsense was nonsense because, as we saw, Theresa May didn't get the landslide she was expected. But I think people need to consider as well, that they may have done even better had they a better leader running a campaign for Labour. Labour alienated people like me with their appointment of Corbyn. I'm wondering how many people didn't vote for Labour solely because of Corbyn that they could have got on board with a better leader.
Yeah, a lot of Labour MPs didn't even mention him on their literature.
No, we had Andy Burnham on all ours and canvassing in our area.
And it's not just about whether Corbyn can win an election or not. He didn't, just to remind you all.
People seem confused on this point.
Putting that out there. Even if he could win, would you actually want him to? And would you want him as Prime Minister? I mean, yes, he's certainly polished his appearance on the media. I mean, when you look at him, he appears a bit more relaxed. You know, that interview he had with Jeremy Paxman, who's still awesome, by the way. I will not hear anything to the contrary, by the way. When he had that interview, he did appear a bit more relaxed and, dare I say, almost flirtatious with Paxman. So he's definitely had some media training. He knows that he can't just have this fuck them attitude. He realizes that he needs to start acting like a leader. And, in the week up to the general election, the gap between the Conservatives and Labour did shrink, because if this election had been about a month before, then I think there would have been a massive Tory majority. Definitely, she would have won it hands down, Theresa May. But by the time it came to the election, that gap had just narrowed a lot, and I don't know whether it was. I think yes, Labour did campaign a bit better. But it also has to do with the fact that the Tories have got such a blah leader. I mean, there's no charisma with Theresa May either. She didn't bother really campaigning. She didn't take questions from audience members. She didn't really interact much with the public, did she? So if the Tories had a better leader and didn't piss off so many of their core voters, who knows? And it's like someone else suggested as well, and as have you, if Labour had a different leader, then they might have done a lot better. But just to remind everyone, they still lost.
Yes, Labour lost the election.
Just putting that out there again.
Well, from one bunch of losers to another loser, and that's Tim Farron, leader of the Lib Dems. I voted for the Lib Dems because I couldn't vote for the Tories. I weren't voting for Labour, and it doesn't matter. I'm in a Labour constituency. I could have walked in there, done an impression of an orangutan, and voted UKIP, and it wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. So he stepped down. Now, there's been a lot of questioning of him and his beliefs and how they inform, or how they affect, should I say, his liberal values and his liberal policies. So the Liberal Democrats are pretty classically liberal. Pro-gender equality, pro-gay rights, things like that, pro-choice, I believe. Yet, Tim Farron's a conservative Christian. And I suppose they've been trying a few gotchas on him in interviews, asking him whether or not he will say whether homosexuality is a sin or not, and he dodges the question. He won't answer it, which it usually sets off alarm bells to me. However, when you listen to his rhetoric on gay rights and his track record on gay rights, it's clear to me he's pro-LGBT rights in all the ways you'd want him to be. However, he stops short of saying whether or not it's a sin. Now, that rubs me up the wrong way a little bit, but is that just secularism in action? Is that just true liberalism? What are your thoughts on this?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because he has his personal religious views, but then the way he votes doesn't seem to tally with that, because he did vote in favour of LGBT rights. But I was just confused at him saying, there seemed to be a clash between his values and liberalism and secular values, etc., etc. But I just thought, well, if you thought that, then surely you should have known that before. Why have you come to this realization now? And a few people have suggested that if he had been a Muslim political leader, he wouldn't have got the same type of grilling over his religious faith. What do you think of that?
I think that's a good question. I think
because I can't recall any Muslim leader ever having been questioned about that, and I don't know whether it's because Tim Farron has specifically talked about these issues before and said, "Oh, my faith motivates me. My faith comes first, etc., etc." Whereas maybe other Muslim politicians haven't quite said the same.
Maybe. I mean, he's not struck me as somebody who leads with his faith when I've seen him talk. But I think Christians are fair game for them kind of questions in a way that Muslims perhaps aren't. Yeah,
and it's because Christianity is constantly mocked and taken the piss out.
And rightly so.
All the time. And yet when it comes to, I think, Islam, it's a little bit different. And I think it's because that people think that the debate can easily descend into racism.
Yes.
Because they think, the Islam is seen as the brown man's religion, and if you do that, you're attacking the brown man, so you're instantly racist, whereas Christianity is seen as the white man's religion, and white men are fair game. So anything goes, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that Maajid Nawaz did very well to expose when he gets airtime with someone who's an Islamist, because non-Muslim interviewers or people who are not versed in the religion at all don't know what key questions to ask these people to reveal their true colours about their actual beliefs and their attitudes towards women, homosexuals, adulterers. And Maajid Nawaz has done a very good job of exposing that on several occasions, and he knows the kind of weasel words and tricky language some of these Islamist Jews to make it seem like they've answered the question when they haven't. And I think that's the difference, because I think Christianity is very familiar. It's part of the cultural fabric of the UK, and I think I think interviewers are more in their comfort zone questioning that doctrine and people's adherence to it more than they would be, say, a Muslim. We all need to go to Quran class, I think's the main bullet point here.
Excellent. Well, I mean, people just need to listen to our podcast, and that'll just instantly educate them, I think.
Yes, free education. You are welcome, audience.
Well, also, I think, don't forget, the Liberal Democrats overall did not do that well anyway.
No.
And I don't know whether, I mean, that's an understatement, I know. And I don't know whether, Tim Farron is just blaming this quote-unquote media attack on him and his religious views for doing so badly. I mean, smaller parties did not do that well. UKIP, I mean, who are UKIP now? Greens didn't do well, Lib Dems didn't do well. This was essentially a two-party race.
As cutting edge as our election coverage has been, I think it's just missing a little something. I think it might be worth calling in a special Taking the Myth political correspondent. What do you think?
Go for it.
Hola.
Hello, mate. How are you doing?
How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. I'm really excellent, in fact. What a beautiful evening.
Whereabouts are you now in the world?
I'm in Southampton.
They finally kicked you out, did they, in Spain?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm surplus to requirements in Spain. I think I'm actually in England as well. So.
Oh, that's even worse, isn't it? England for your sins.
It's lovely. It's like being back in Spain, though. Well, weather-wise.
give it a week. You're on with Iram as well.
Hello, Iram. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I've not spoken to either of you for ages. Very nice to hear from you both.
You don't write. You don't call.
It's been the language has been less colourful without you around.
Well, I'll see if I can fix that.
Iram dropped 2 C-bombs on the podcast last week.
Who did?
Iram.
You never did.
2 huge C-bombs.
I'm sorry, I'm really guilty, but I've not been keeping up. I've been so busy in the last few weeks, but I think I might be getting into a rhythm now where I can kind of be a bit more useful around Twitter and things and podcasts.
Good to hear.
Hopefully.
Well, since we've got you, what is your viewpoint on the general election?
Well, from a perspective, as a voter, I think, why the fuck did I bother? And
I should have said that before. Can we just rewind all the way back?
And as a member of I suppose, the British Empire, I suppose I am.
Does that hurt? Does that sting to say?
It does, and I'm ashamed. And third, I suppose, they're going to get some religious loonies just so Mrs. May can be the Prime Minister. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're going to ask a bunch of genuine religious fucking maniacs.
Don't we need more diversity?
Yep, that's what's going to put her over the edge. That's what qualifies her to become the Prime Minister.
It's a great point, though, because they can, obviously, Theresa May needs them more than they need her, and they can place down all these demands in part of the deal. You know, they want this changing, that changing. How much influence do you think they'll have, and how much of it do you think will come from this hardline Christian perspective?
100% of it will come from their Christian perspective. Whenever you ever met a religious zealot who didn't base everything on what it says or their interpretation of what it says in some fucking book, some stupid old book or other. So and that is exactly what you're going to get. And they have got Theresa May by the bollocks.
Do you know what? I wasn't panicking before. I was trying to remain calm. But after Scotsman commentary, I'm like, oh my fucking word. What the fuck is going on?
I'm trying to be upbeat here.
That's you upbeat.
Yeah.
So the main areas we're looking at really here are we're talking gay rights, really, aren't we? Abortion rights, maybe some sort of legislation in regards to the internet.
No.
Oh no, I can't see that happening. I mean, I don't think she'll.
I don't think it's the specific issues. It's the mindset of the people who are going to be controlling the Prime Minister. It's the mindset of them is that they're not looking at the Constitution of Britain or British laws, etc. They're looking at the laws from an invisible man in the sky, aren't they? So their perspective is fucked from the beginning.
Shit.
It's true. It's my genuine feeling about this, and I would be saying the same. I'm not being Christianophobic. I would be the same if it was the members of the Islamic religion or the Hindu religion or whatever. They're all fucking mental. So you know they really shouldn't be involved in politics. And from another perspective, from the Irish perspective, it's an absolute disaster because the Irish people who do not want to be ruled by don't want the top of their island ruled by another country, they're fucked, aren't they? As well.
Basically, we're all hashtag fucked.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's a good hashtag, Iram. Genuinely, you must agree with me that the election was, or the last, since Christmas, really, politics has been off the fucking hook, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I know. I actually stayed up all night for the election because I was covering it, and I was just watching the news all evening, thinking, "Oh my God, what the hell?"
I mean,
imagine how Theresa May felt.
You can't even make comedy out of it because it's so depressingly awful that basically Britain. I don't know what's happened to Britain, but the same thing has happened to America, and they've just gone nationalism psycho, haven't they? Everybody.
Well, I mean, Theresa May kept going on about how, you know, it was all about being strong and stable, and now
she's never said that. She's never said that once, Iram. Stop lying.
I must have dreamt it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where you heard that, Iram.
Strange thing to say.
Must have been something.
The coalition of chaos as well, that was another one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
God. A lot of people are suggesting that she won't make it past the Tory party conference in October.
Yeah, I've got a bet on with my dad. He's in the camp that she'll be fired. Or they'll try and oust her and have a new leadership election. And
who would replace her?
That's my feeling. I don't think Tories have got the appetite for another bit of turmoil.
I don't think anybody's going to do anything. They're just going to be
Labour
all
want an election. Labour wants an election because I think they'll win. And, you know...
Are they really going to get the young ones to come out twice? I mean, God, done it once.
Sake, I mean, that's asking too much.
You're making a good point there, but... But I think it'll just go on in a very British way, and fuck all will get done about it, and it'll end up that we have a fascist. The British government is fascist, and democracy just gets diluted week by week, as it is now.
See, I don't know if that's true, because Theresa May doesn't have a majority, it means she'll have to compromise. Everyone's saying that this means that there won't be a hard Brexit, and some are suggesting that Michael Portillo was saying on this week, this is just the end of Brexit, basically, because she doesn't really have the mandate for it. So I think this, being in minority government, it means she will have to compromise on a lot of things.
Well, you're just being optimistic, but
maybe
the fact is, I don't think the voters of Britain have a say in this. Really, I think it's here's my conspiracy theory for you, which I don't normally have, but I think it's all been decided by people that we don't even fucking vote for. We don't even know who they are.
The Jews or the lizards or the lizard Jews?
I said Freemasons.
Those bastards that were fucking about with that guy's shoes.
All right, man. It's good to have you back on. I'm glad to hear from you.
It's nice to be back. Next time I'll have give me a bit of more a day or so preparation. And maybe I'll be able to swear a bit.
He gets 20 minutes usually. I usually just 20 minutes before I just ping him a message. Do you want to fancy joining in? Nailed it though. Nailed it.
Yeah, lovely talking to you guys.
You too.
Really good.
Take care.
To you soon, hopefully. Yeah, have a good one.
That was senior myth-taking correspondent, Ascotsman Abroad. You can find him on Twitter at Ascotsman Abroad, strangely. That's a good takeaway.
Think people will remember that?
It's possible.
Well, I mean, this is the British people. I mean, look at what they've just given us in this election. Can we really trust them?
Another thing I wanted to move on to next, now we've pretty much covered British politics, is our hometown of Manchester again. We had the terror attacks, and then following hot on the heels from that, Tommy Robinson, who's no longer part of the EDL, in association with Rebel Media, who he now works for, organised a march in Manchester. And I went along and got some video footage. I made a little mini 25-minute film, put it on YouTube, got a few interviews, spoke to a few people. It kicked off a few times. There was some interesting characters there. So I suppose I'll preface what I'm saying as I wouldn't necessarily take my experience as a general overall view of it. It is one person's subjective experience of what went on the ground, so I can only really tell you what I saw.
How long were you there for?
I was there all day. I got there at 11. I think I left about 4:45, just as it was kicking off. So the idea was, I didn't leave because it was kicking off. I was kind of getting bored. It kicked off a little bit when I was there, so I thought, I'll hang around for a bit. Then it calmed down again. I thought, fuck it, I'm going home.
You had nothing better to do on Sunday.
That was it. Nothing better to do with my Sunday whatsoever. So the idea was, Tommy's idea, the plan was to march from Piccadilly. So you obviously know the lay of the land in Manchester. We've got Piccadilly Gardens, then about 9 minutes walk from there, you've got Piccadilly train station. The idea was to march from Piccadilly train station all the way to Piccadilly Gardens, where a few guest speakers had give some talks. So I got there at 11. Tommy Robinson was there early. I arrived in Piccadilly Gardens to find him arguing with the police and various members of the public. Credit where credit's due. He's got balls, this man, because he's about 5'6", and there's people coming up to him, challenging him, constantly quite aggressively in many cases, and he doesn't flinch and he doesn't back down, and he talks back to him. I got there, and just as I was setting my camera up, some guy runs at him and shouts, "Tommy, you fucking hobbit cunt!" Like that to him. And Tommy starts going after him to ask him, to talk, and then the police step in. So I got there and I started interviewing a few people. Now, there was some common themes. The people on the, I suppose, the so-called anti-fascist side, the anti-racist side, it's difficult to get them to speak to me. They'll talk to me, and they'll answer my questions. As soon as I say, "Do you mind if I get this on video? I'm a video blogger." "No, don't want to talk to you." No, they'd walk off. So they're all about challenging fascism and everything, but when it came to the crunch, wouldn't talk to me. Especially the people who had the faces covered, they wouldn't talk to me. A few people did. I spoke to one LGBT activist. He was studying that camp, and I asked him about the stats on homosexuality within Islam, specifically within Britain. He wouldn't. It was like he couldn't hear me. He kept just answering a different question whenever I brought it up, and I wasn't bringing it up aggressively. I was just asking him, is this the kind of thing as someone who's pro-LGBT rights you think you could stand against? And he just wouldn't answer it.
Yeah, he kept saying, we've got to start with where we are.
And I told
what does that mean?
Yes. Oh, so you watched it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah. Of course I watched it, and I was just having a look at the footage, and I thought the so-called anti-fascist side seemed more aggressive and violent, because I could see police trying to hold them back. But I don't know whether that's because of just preempting it or whether they were genuinely being more antagonistic.
Well, my perspective on this, when I was there on the ground, when I arrived in the day, there was a handful of people on the anti-Sharia side, and there was a handful of people on the anti-fascist side. As the day progressed, that ratio changed significantly. The Antifa, anti-racist people were in such small number in comparison to these mostly middle-aged white men. I mean, a lot. Obviously, that's not entirely fair, because there were some Sikhs and some ex-Muslims and other people. Now, what I will say is Tommy was adamant that he didn't want any trouble. He was saying this to all the police. He didn't want any incidents whatsoever. He's not responsible for everyone who turns up. However, there were some elements that turned up looking for trouble. And there's some big controversy now, or they're making something of it. The police were called an EDL event, and then this got reported to the media. The BBC asked the police about it. The police said, yeah, it's an EDL event. Then all the news articles were like, the EDL comes to Manchester, it's the EDL. And Tommy and his cohorts kick off saying it's got nothing to do with the EDL. And my feelings on that is, well, it isn't an official EDL event, but
it did look like one.
It was indistinguishable.
Sorry, but it's EDL in everything.
Exactly. And for a few reasons, which I'll just quickly go through. First of all, Tommy's ex-EDL. He still has a large number of EDL people who support him, who turned up because he's there. Secondly, there was another guy with him called Tommy English. I don't know anything about him. I had a quick glance of his Facebook, his Twitter, and a few of his other bits, and he is part of the EDL. So when he's advertising the event that he's partly responsible for organising, he's advertising it via all the same channels that he'd advertised the EDL stuff to, so the EDL people are coming. I spoke to people who said they were in the EDL. I've got one of them on film, some toothless moron who was saying, get them all out. And I was trying to...
the one that said, I'm not racist, or actually, I am.
Yeah, I mean, this was brilliant. You just let them speak and they hang themselves. It's fantastic. And that's not to say that's not representative of everyone who's there. That's the problem. There was a lot of people. There was some people with sinister racist ideas. Some people quite balanced were talking to me about reform and scriptures. It's not the people, it's the ideas. So, I mean, I didn't feel comfortable in either camp, really. I felt safer with the anti-fascists, to be honest. I got pushed once, and it was by someone on the anti-Sharia side. Tried to knock the camera out of my hand. So, in terms of it being not an EDL march, what did we have? We had loads of people waving St. George's around. We had people singing, I'm English till I die, I'm English till I die. One guy brought a pig's head to hold up. They were shouting, you're not English anymore. And this isn't just a small minority of them. This is like huge crowds worth of people shouting this. And this is just pure protest through the veneer of like national identity. It's nationalism. So to any impartial observer walking by, seeing that, what thing could we point out to them? Say, actually, no, it's not an EDL march because of this. I couldn't tell you one thing that differentiates. You go and search EDL rally or EDL march on YouTube, it'll look identical to the footage I've just taken from Manchester. So yeah, they can whinge on a technicality, but it just seemed to be indistinguishable from an EDL rally.
What's the point of Tommy saying he's former EDL then, when he's continuing what he did before, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's some sort of legal requirement that I know there used to be, where he, for certain periods of time he was no longer allowed to associate with the EDL for legal reasons. I don't know if that's the same. I mean, you can't blame Tommy Robinson for this. I don't think. I think he just started this event and loads of undesirables turned up.
Well, surely he's been to he's organised events like this before. Surely he knows what it's going to end up like. How many people actually were turned up in the first place? How many people were invited to come along, say? How many of them were part of the original group?
It looked to me like there were 1,000 people that turned up pretty easily. Now, a lot of them came via the train station, so they've travelled. A lot of them, I think, so here's another thing that was plentiful. Alcohol. as well. Everywhere you looked, bottles, cans, things like that. So it looked indistinguishable from any EDL event I've ever seen or been near, to be honest. So you can whinge that it was unfairly labelled something it wasn't, but it's a distinction without difference to me.
Yeah, and also, I mean, my biggest concern with this was how many police officers had to patrol that march. I mean, they could easily have been on, doing something more important, and they had to just waste a lot of their resources just on this demonstration. And what was the point of it? I mean, I support everyone's right to protest and demonstrate, but at the same time, I just think, what's the point? What's it going to actually achieve? Are you going there just to make a stand, or are you going there to convert people to your side? Because these events, they just, it's people who are already on your side who come anyway and just end up shouting a load of slogans. Maybe I'm being unfair, I don't know, but I don't see what this actually achieves. What
you just said there basically summed up my entire experience of the event. So we had people on one side shouting Nazi scum out, EDL go away, take your Nazi mates as well, something like that. Some of them was quite creative. And then you had the other people on the other side just chanting about England, and even sometimes there were people, they talk to each other from either side, and it'd be essentially, fuck off back over to your own side, we're here, you're there, kind of thing. And I don't know what it achieved. And you make a fantastic point about the police, one that I wish I'd have thought of when I was there, and because I got a bit of FaceTime with Tommy, asked him a couple of questions. Because Manchester's on heightened alert as it is because of the terror attacks. Yeah. All of them. And the thing is, I mean, I try and speak to the police at events like this, just try and get a feel of what's going on, because you can find out how tense they are just by talking to them. And the thing is, so at one point, I ended up in Piccadilly right at the far end, and the police made a line, and I couldn't get back to Piccadilly Gardens, and I had to get back to Piccadilly Gardens because that's the way the march was going. So I took a massive wide berth all the way around the outskirts, down some side streets, just to get back to Piccadilly Gardens, and even them were littered with police. And I said to him, I said, what's the plans for the march and why are you here? And one of the policemen said, well, we're here because they don't really know what they're doing, these guys. They're not even sure which way they're marching. They don't know the area. We keep asking them. So it's just a precaution. We've got it here and there just in case they take another turn or whatever. Yeah. So even the police that were there doing it, and there was a lot of them, just to look after the main bulk, there was still police covering them on the outskirts of the city as well and cordoning off areas. I felt sorry for... I mean, obviously, we have that big music event in Heaton Park Life. There were people walking through there with face paint. Walking past. Tweens with wellies and face paints coming up to me saying, what the hell's going on? Is everything all right? I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. Just you might want to get a move on and walk around that way instead. But the trams... they couldn't get to the gig because the trams kept getting stopped and things like that. So
yeah, I saw that bit. Yeah, God.
Like you say, what did it achieve? I don't really know. The police did a fantastic job again. They were really, really well organised. I mean, there was one point where the guys on the anti-Sharia side just charged the anti-fascist protesters. And they ran, basically. They were essentially teenage students to me. That most of them, the overwhelming majority of these anti-fascists were teenage students.
That says all.
That's how they looked. And the other side were like middle-aged men chanting England, England. And I didn't feel at home on either side, to be honest. So I don't know what that achieved. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll happen again. But as far as
there's one planned in Bristol,
right?
Because I saw Tommy English tweet something. I think that's this weekend. So they're having them all over, really. There's just a bunch of middle-aged, bald white men just travelling all around the country, singing football slogans. No offence, but yeah,
that's how it came across to me.
It does. I'm sorry, but it did not look like some sort of anti-Sharia march. It just looked like a bunch of, if you don't know what's going on there, and if you just happen to come across this protest, it looked like a bunch of drunk football hooligans just decided to start singing in the middle of Piccadilly Gardens and trying to cause trouble.
That was the outward appearance, definitely. So I am going to issue a not all caveat now, because there'll be people who listening to this who turned up with perfectly good intentions, were completely peaceful,
no. You know what?
and aren't thugs, obviously. But what I think the main point I'm trying to get is from the impartial observer, which is the person you've mentioned. It is just a bunch of people who already agree with each other mostly. So what you want is, if you're going to put on a protest and a display, you want the impartial observer to be taken in by your message. You want
exactly. I feel like this. Sorry to cut you off, but I feel this regardless of whatever the demonstration is, because I think a couple of days ago I saw Owen Jones tweet about, some sort of march or protest again, and I thought, this is just going to be inviting the same people, saying the same things, preaching to the conveyed. You're not going to have outsiders coming in and saying, oh, what's going on here? Oh, let me listen to your message. Oh, well, you've convinced me now. It doesn't happen like that. It's just basically virtue signalling, and
it was intimidating and it was aggressive.
It did. That's how it. Obviously, I don't know how it must have been if you're actually there all day, but when you just look at footage when there were thousands of them, it does look very intimidating, and that's not what you want when you're out shopping in Manchester. You just want to be able to relax and get on with your business.
Nip into Greggs, get a pasty,
or a flat white from an independent coffee shop.
Several brands are available.
But I don't know what Tommy's trying to achieve. I mean, like I've said before, we've said this before as well, and I know people on certain sides of the argument would just completely dismiss us for this, but I'm not the type to completely dismiss everything he says. People like him exist for a reason, and he's still there for a reason, and I wouldn't dismiss him completely. I think he does have a point when it comes to certain issues, but I don't know what he's trying to achieve with his tactics as well. It's like he's not really bothered about change. He just wants to show people, look, I'm angry and I want my voice heard. It doesn't look like he wants to change anything. He keeps saying, this must not happen. We don't want this. We don't want that. That's great. None of us want, certain aspects of Sharia law here either. We don't want FGM. We don't want, all sorts of horrendous things that happen in this country, and that's fair enough. You're entitled to say that and to shout it, fine, but what are you actually going to do about it?
I mean, to his credit, on a personal level, he will engage. So he was.
Yes, I'll say that about him. He doesn't.
He won't shy away from a discussion.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't shy away from a debate. If someone said to him, right, let's talk about this, he'll say, okay then. Whereas you have people on the other side who just virtue signal, say, I refuse to talk to X, Y, or Z because he or she is scum. And they're doing that purely to virtue signal, purely to show people, oh, look, I'm not one of the fascists. I'm not one of the far right. I'm not one of the whatever. And I'm not going to engage at all. And then some of those people, they'll just block you on Twitter, for example. So, I'm sorry, but you live in your cozy little bubble, but there's other stuff happening elsewhere.
You have to engage with Tommy. You have to engage with him because he is, whether people like it or not, no matter what they think about him, is a very influential figure. That man managed to get thousands of people to Manchester on his say so.
Yeah, he's definitely got a following. It's like with other characters as well. They've got a following. You can't just dismiss them completely. Now, that doesn't mean that's not saying that they're completely right. It's not saying that they're completely wrong either. It's just saying that you have to acknowledge the fact that this person has a lot of followers, definitely has a lot of influence.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. You can't just dismiss him, because simply dismissing him or his followers doesn't make the problem go away.
Definitely not. I mean, I managed to speak to. I mean, this is the thing, because I got in Piccadilly Gardens, and the man is one of the most hated faces in Britain. Whether you would think that's deserved or not is probably a discussion for another day. But he has people generally wanting to do him harm, and he was stood in the middle of Piccadilly Gardens, just fielding questions left, right, and centre from people shouting, disagreeing with him, and he stood his ground. I wandered over and said, "Could I have a few questions?" Told him who it was that we'd spoke before and what have you. And obviously we're due to go playing football together this weekend, best chums now, etc., etc. Made that up completely. Just thought I'd give somebody tractors some ammunition.
I always knew you were a far-right enabler, fascist, and exposed yourself.
I asked him, I just said, look, I mean, I told him that I think he's unfairly called a Nazi, because I thought I'd try and ingratiate my way in. He's unfairly called a Nazi and a white supremacist, but does he feel he's done enough to prevent those elements from arriving today? Does he feel like he says enough?
Does he actually... I mean, I don't really follow him that much on Twitter, but has he distanced himself from racists or fascists? Does he... Because the thing is, I've noticed whenever he retweets something I've said, all his followers, like, I'll just get them all piling on me, and then some of them will come out with just really, really horrible things, or they'll say things like, "Oh, deport them all," or blah blah. Just really pointless comments. And I don't know, maybe you follow him more closely. Does he actually distance himself from those people? Does he, say regularly, if you're racist, if you're fascist, if you believe in this and that, you're not going to get any support from me?
I don't follow him close enough, to be honest. And he when I asked him this question, he's... I
thought you were busy, mate.
Yeah, he's of the view that, I mean, he said to me, he's done more than anyone to challenge the far right in this country. He's had fights with neo-Nazis. He's, chased various...
What, really? To challenge the far right?
Yeah, so, I mean, but I have heard him, like, historical EDL rallies videos of him saying he doesn't want any racist, Nazis aren't welcome, things like that. So...
Yeah, Farron.
Yeah, he has done that, but I think he probably just thinks, well, he's doing his thing, he's not interested in them things. But I think he has to realise that he has a lot of influence, and those elements will be attracted to him nonetheless. And I think he probably needs to be... It wouldn't hurt for him to be stronger on that point.
Yes, and the issue with me is like, sometimes he does portray himself as a victim too often. If he does something wrong, he makes it out as though the police are out to get him, like with the whole contempt of court issue.
Didn't do nothing. That's his entire book. I don't know if you've read his book, but I mean, if what he says is true in that book, he's the most oppressed person since Nelson Mandela. Because everything the police do is the police are completely logical and they're out to get him, and it's never his fault. And this may be true, of course, but we're only getting his side of the argument.
Like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Like, for every 4 incidents that has happened, there probably is one where he has been unfairly treated. And the problem is his followers, they do not like any criticism of him either. They'll say, "Oh, but what about the other side? What about this?" Well, that's fair enough. We could talk about that, but I'm specifically talking about this and Tommy Robinson. And the way they attack, say, reformist-minded Muslims or liberal Muslims, and you think, well, surely you want to be able to engage with those people and get them on side, because really they're after the same thing, which is to get rid of Islamism and to get rid of extremism as well. Surely you want those people to be on board with you, so why you just alienate them? And there are a lot of Tommy's supporters who will have a go at Majid Nawaz, for example, and say, "Oh, he's not being honest about the faith, blah blah blah," and they will be happy until he completely rejects the religion and then comes out and starts attacking it as well, just to prove to them, like, look, I am on your side. And it's fair enough if you think, religion is bad or Islam is bad in general. That's your opinion, and I have no issue with that. But then some people, you can't just expect everyone to drop their faith and then start hating it just so they can fit in with you. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I mean, that to me does smack of anti-Muslim sentiment, the way they treat Majid, because I don't like religion. I don't like Islam especially. I'm happy to say that. But if I was to sit down and talk with Majid, I could have an open conversation about this. He'd be open to talk about it. He'd reason himself well. He wouldn't, put a fat R on me or tell me I can't say this or that. And it becomes more about where we agree on the important issues,
Yes, he's one of the few reformists that he actually highlights what's wrong in the religion and how we must get rid of it. I mean, he was on his show last weekend where he was talking about the wife beating verse, and he said, it's just plain wrong. And there were so many Muslim callers who were saying, oh, no, but context, oh, but no. And he was saying, no, but there's no defense for this. And you can tell that there are some people who are, they do maybe describe themselves as progressives or liberals or reformers even, but their idea of reform is just to go back to the text, whereas Majid's actually saying, there is a problem there, and as Muslims we need to react to that and respond to that. And unfortunately, if even he's a problem for this anti-Sharia side, then we really do have issues. People like him, they're supposed to be on your side. Really, should be alienating people like that.
Yeah, so the principles that I have in common with Majid, and I'm talking, pro free speech, pro gender equality, pro LGBT rights, pro secularism, pro freedom of religion. We have all these things in common, that the differences he has with me because of his religion become completely trivial when you boil down to it. So why have I got a problem with somebody like him? Why is what he's doing an issue to my sensibilities in any way? He's an ally in every sense of the word. And what people need to realise is he puts himself at more risk than anyone, because he has the far-right crackpots who think, and I've read a lot of these blogs, think that he's some stealth jihadist just biding his time. It's lunacy.
Yeah, he's practicing Taqiyya.
Yeah, I had one stalking me, one of these people, for a long time. Like, I'm talking 6 or 7 emails a day, messages on my blogs, several Twitter accounts, just trying to warn me about Majid after I'd had Majid on my podcast. Then you've got the people who are on the right, who are in Tommy Robinson's camp, who won't be happy until he apostatizes himself. And then you've got the people on the far left who will call him, a bigot, an Islamophobe. So he's fighting on all fronts, basically. And he's got this challenge because he's just upholding liberal values, as far as I can see. So it's ridiculous the way he's been treated. So we talk about the fact that we can't seem to go a single podcast episode without some act of terrorism. For a while, it was mostly atrocities committed in the name of religion in distant lands that we spoke about. Then it got a little closer to home with attacks in Europe, and now we're a month since the last podcast, and we've had another large scale, not huge, but too big in any meaningful sense, attack in the capital again. I don't know if you want to share some thoughts on that.
I mean, it was just less than 2 weeks after the Manchester one, and then had another one in London, and you just think, yeah, this is just going to keep on happening.
Do you think, quick question, do you think that this was planned to be done at this time regardless, or do you think when there's a terror attack close by, this kind of prompts them a little bit, or gives them the confidence to set their plans into motion quicker, kind of encourages them perhaps?
Well, I'm not really sure how jihadis think, Stephen.
Liar. We know the truth.
But I think this was done deliberately ahead of the elections, because, come on, too much of a coincidence, right?
Yes, I saw a lot of that. Rufus fucking Hound, he did this after the Manchester. I've had beef with this chap before, British comedian, used to do a lot of panel shows, then got a little bit political and kind of faded into obscurity like all political comedians should. He was saying that it was a little bit fishy that there'd been a suicide bombing in Manchester Arena just before the election, as if to say that this was orchestrated by the powers that be to ensure that Theresa May can get in on the back of this on the strength of her being, some glorious, terror-fighting leader. Who are these people and why do they think this way?
That's a very good question. I think they exist purely to piss us off.
I mean, in what world do these people think that some amazing, all-controlling, stealthy, omnipotent power would be quite happy to blow the legs off children just so Theresa May could get the vote. And also, aren't they also conceding that the opposition's going to be shit on terror if a terrorist act is going to bolster Theresa May but not the other parties? It could just so easily be used and spun by the other parties to get in. Why is it that Theresa May's this strong and stable, isn't it? That's why. What was I thinking? Obviously strong and stable.
Actually, this was I'm gonna laugh, but I was actually having a conversation with someone. I won't name them.
Do it.
I can't.
Okay.
Not worth my life. It was a Muslim person who seemed to think that it's all a setup just to scare us all and to give Muslims a bad name. Obviously.
I've got nothing.
I just said, you do realise that, Theresa May's ratings have actually dropped in the polls, so she's actually not done a really good job if that's what her aim was now.
She's actually, and I should have mentioned this up front when we were talking about the election coverage, I reckon these terrorist attacks have actually hurt her popularity because it was brought up then about all the cuts she'd made to the police, because we've had a lot of love for our emergency services these last couple of weeks, and rightly so, because they've done an amazing job in just impossible circumstances again and again, throwing themselves headfirst into danger to protect the public. And so the political hot topic has become Theresa May has made a lot of cuts to these people. These people are heroes. To me, Theresa May's made cuts, and I think that's damaged her in a way that was, reflected at the polls. So, it's the worst. If the powers that be thought this was a good move, it's obviously backfired.
Shit powers that be.
Terrible.
Yeah, I think it's just what I found really rather bemusing when we found out the identities of these terrorists was how. So one of them actually appeared on.
I know where this is going.
On a program called The Jihadis Next Door.
Whoa, hang on, let me stop you there. Right, so, wait a minute, let me just see if I can get this right. We have a man who, for all intents and purposes, committed a pretty big act of jihad in London the other day, and you're making the claim that he appeared in some sort of documentary film called The Jihadis Next Door before he carried out this attack.
Yeah, I mean, if only we'd had some sort of clue beforehand, yeah, how could we ever miss the warning signs? Yeah, it's a real mystery to me.
Oh, God, I just don't know what to say.
Look, people keep saying that these people are lone wolves, they're crazy nutters, blah, 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 but they're not. They are all linked.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think... I still keep bringing this back to the theology of it, and I think that needs to be addressed a bit more. I mean, something annoyed me a little bit when one of the details of this attack, that there was 3 men. They turned up, they drove down London Bridge in a hired van. This van was later found to have Molotov cocktails in the back of it that they'd made. They didn't actually use them during the attack, but they burst out of this van after it had crashed, after they'd knocked down several people on the bridge. They knocked one of them into the Thames. He died. They found his body a few days later. They jump out of the van in an area that's pretty much populated with restaurants and bars, and just went on a stabbing spree. They also had fake suicide vests attached around the waist. I think they were made out of like tape and empty plastic bottles, just to give the appearance. I mean, I wouldn't know what a genuine explosive vest looks like. So I think, to give the appearance of a suicide vest. Now, the police chief was saying, his approximation of this was to say they did this to strike maximum fear. Now, to be honest, I don't think you've got much time to inspect whether or not a suicide vest is authentic looking or not when you're having a knife jabbed in your throat. So I don't think that was the reason. My feeling on this is they did this to guarantee death by cop. Suicide, martyrdom. They know if they look like they're going to detonate themselves, the police are going to take a headshot, the police are going to riddle you with bullets, and that's what happened. I think 50 odd rounds were fired in the space of seconds when the police finally arrived on the scene.
Yes, and there was one person on my Facebook saying, why did the police have to shoot them in the head? Why not shoot at the leg so that at least we can At least you can arrest that person and question them after. You try being a police officer when someone's got what looks like a fucking suicide vest on and holding a knife. Fuck's sake.
People are stupid. They don't understand how... what police are required to do in terms of their own safety, and how I mean, these people aren't Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh. They can't kneecap someone from 50 yards with a pistol. They don't even train you to do that with firearms. You've got to go for the torso or the head. When someone's coming at you with a lethal weapon, someone's threatening the public with a lethal weapon, you can't get off 6 rounds trying to get someone in the leg whilst they're getting a bit stabby or shooty somewhere. It's a ridiculous notion that the police should be able to just I think people's only frame of reference for this kind of thing is the movies where, they take out the bad guy with a shot to the leg or whatever from whatever distance. It's not how real life works. You're lucky enough...
Wait, real life isn't like movies?
Apparently so. There's no 20th Century Fox fanfare and a bit of credits, and all of a sudden John McClane turns up and kills all the fucking terrorists.
Aww.
And rides off into the sunset. So these people who say...
There's not going to be a John McClane.
There's a lot of people in Black Lives Matter who are like... The guy had a gun, but he didn't even shoot at the police. Well, he presented a fucking gun. Are the police supposed to wait until he gets a couple of shots off and go, fair play, you got one in there, now let me respond? It's not chess. It's not fucking chess. It's life or death. These people have to make a decision very quickly, and that decision they make in the split second can mean the difference between them being dead or the more members of the public. So for them to have... I think they arrived on the scene within 8 minutes, something like that.
That was brilliant.
Yes, and completely neutralised. And I don't give a fuck if they're dead. I could not care less. Ideally, it'd be nice to take them alive, question them, see what they know. If they're not on the floor waving a white flag, I don't think the police have any responsibility whatsoever to try and take them in alive. They have to completely neutralise them because they're in the middle of killing people. So... these idiots, I've heard it from a lot of these people that why have they killed them, why have they done the shoot to kill. That's what annoyed me about Jeremy Corbyn a while back when he was asked whether he'd support the shoot to kill a mandate. It just shows how
extremely naive he is.
Yes.
I mean, just knows nothing except how to protest.
In an ideal world, no one would die, not even criminals, but unfortunately it's not an ideal world.
In an ideal world, nobody would die. We would live forever and ever.
And I'd be able to ride my red unicorn all the way to the shops to pick up my pixie dust. But yeah, no, the reality of the situation is you need to kill jihadis when they're getting a bit stabby, unfortunately. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's necessary. We're doing an average of one take in the myth a month now. Do you think next month we'll be talking on a terror attack again somewhere in a populated English city?
Yeah, I hope not, but it happens every time, doesn't it?
I mean, we're recording this whilst the news broke a couple of hours ago that they've just detained a man in Westminster, the political heart of the country, with a large knife. The guy's got a big, massive beard. Looks a little bit Allahu Akbari to me. I can't be sure. So we'll see how that unfolds. But I mean...
Yeah. And at the same time in London, you've got that massive fire that's claimed so many lives and people horrible. Are still missing. It's just...
That's boiling over as well a little bit, isn't it, in terms of public anger.
But you know what really annoys me about whenever something major happens? It's the endless commentary. It's like we've had, say, for example, 50 words worth of facts, and now because we've not got any more facts, let's just invite so many pundits on to talk and comment about it all day, every day. Just talk about absolutely everything. Just rinse the topic out so much. And I think that's what pisses me off about 24-hour media. Some of this commentary and analysis, ongoing analysis, is just shit, basically. I'd rather wait until, a couple of days after so we know what's actually gone on, really. I don't know if you have a different opinion, but it's just endless commentary and focus on it just... it doesn't appeal to me.
I think you're right.
I say it as a journalist.
It's like you have someone talking to me, we don't really know anything, we have no facts yet. Back to the studio for some more not knowing anything yet, some more not facts. Then we're going to go live to the incident where there's some still no facts or any progressing and it is exactly that. But I think this 24-hour news cycle is probably responsible for something we touch on a lot here on this podcast, which is Mo's Mo Problems, and that's
Speaking of Mo.
Yes, this is my clumsy segue into that. So this desire to have 24-hour coverage to draw people in. You turn on your news, you want coverage straight away of whatever it is that's going on. They need talking heads to fill it in. They need opinion from this guy, that guy, this guy, and they bring in these commentators, these Mo's. And as we spoke about on the last podcast, Mohammed, I'm going to say his name like that. No, I have never made a sound like that in my life. I surprised myself then. I'm not quite sure which region of my limbs that came from, but I'm a little bit scared. Anyway, so he's become the subject of the conspiracies on the right, because this one chap, this bobble-headed buffoon who keeps turning up he was on the Big Questions with me, he was on Question Time, he was on Channel 4, he was on CNN, he was on Victoria Derbyshire, all within a small space of time with these Manchester attacks. And I'm like, no, it's not a conspiracy, because we and you know how people get on these things, because we've been in that position ourselves, and I'm not getting any due money from the BBC to appear on things, unfortunately. It's funny, actually. Someone was asking me...
I could do with some due money right now, actually. If there's any rich ones out there,
This is
please.
where it doesn't help to have Nikki Campbell following you on Twitter, because someone was questioning... Nikki Campbell wasn't even tagged in this tweet. Someone was questioning me whether... I was saying, he's not going to get paid to come on and be in the audience. Then they were saying to me, well, did you get paid to go on the show? And I was like, no, of course I didn't get paid. And then Nikki Campbell replied to that tweet saying, actually, yeah, we played for his... we give him a couple of grand hotel mini bar, and little reeled off all this stuff and then just left the conversation. And I was like, no, I know that's a joke. Is that going to be on someone's fucking blog?
Yeah, probably be on Islam is Taking Over, .wordpress.com.
Well, he makes me laugh, Nicky Campbell. I think he's very smart and funny. But I was sat in the pub the other day, just relaxing, away from a television, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to see this Mohammed in here. Everything's fine. And then my phone started lighting up, message after message, family, friends, people on Twitter, just like, that bobble-headed guy's on TV again. I'm like, surely he's not. So I'm lucky, I get iPlayer on my phone, thinking that he's going to be on the news. Something he's not. He's stood there on a game show. He's on a fucking game show.
What is he doing on a game show? Doesn't he know gambling is haram?
Yeah, haram. Oh, so I don't know what he's going to be on next. X Factor, perhaps. Cash in the Attic, maybe.
I just want to know why he was dressed like that. He looked like... I don't know if you're...
He looked like he was about to invade Rome.
He looked... Julius Caesar look. He looked like one of those... one of these really rich landlords that you get in Pakistan. And one of the ways they show that they're a landlord and they're very important is they have this big, massive shawl draped over them, toga-esque, like. So yes, the landlord sahib is coming. And that's how he was dressed.
You know what I've just remembered, and I completely forgot about this. He's had another appearance as well. Now, this one's really strange because it was just by chance that he popped up on the TV. Pakistan were playing in the cricket, and I think the ball went into the crowd, and the camera zoomed in, and he's there cheering. He's a Manchester City fan as well, and it's definitely, because I've got loads of messages about that. He's he's everywhere. He's some weird social experiment. So I don't know where he's going to turn up next.
He was at another game, because I remember one of my friends messaged me and said, "Is that him?" And it showed him in the audience of a cricket match, and I thought,
yeah, that's the one. That's what I'm talking about.
He failed the Tebbit test.
Hey, we're going to have to get him on the podcast, aren't we? Surely.
My God.
We should bring him in.
That conversation ago.
Oh, we should bring him in for a Taking the Myth.
Yeah, taking the myth out of him.
Tag team. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah,
Although he's big time now, isn't he? He might be above mere podcasts when he's getting so much FaceTime.
Yeah, can we really afford to have him on?
That's true. What's the big questions going rate?
But I actually wanted to make a point, and it was slightly different from this Mo one. But you know how people are talking about having these new voices on and reformers and people who speak sense. There's this Imam in Australia,
yes.
Imam Tawhidi. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's this Shia, supposedly a cleric that seems to be saying all these right things. He says, people need to Muslims need to give up on Sharia when they move to Western countries. We need to shut down Islamic schools, etc., etc. And people have been hailing him as this great guy who's saying the things that need to be said. But, you know, a few people have actually been sending me links and articles about him, and apparently I don't think he's an accredited imam or cleric, and he's actually playing really sectarian games here. You know, for him it's about criticizing Sunni Islam.
Oh, right.
Really. I don't know if anyone else has more information about him out there, but I you know, I don't want to praise this guy or hail him as some sort of moderate, because I'm quite dubious.
I'm suspicious.
I'm quite skeptical about him. I'm not really sure. He seems too good to be true, and I think he would be.
We could do with knowing more about him, because I have seen him everywhere, and he just appears to have come from nowhere. And he's been on the podcast of some people who I respect, and I think do a decent job. I've not watched them yet. I know Sam Harris just endorsed one of his latest podcast appearance on Laylo's show, and there is something salesman-like about him, and I need to delve into this a bit more. I mean, maybe I might invite him on to talk, I don't know, but yeah, like you, I'm a bit unsure about him, what he stands for, where he's come from, what his credentials are, what is he pushing, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So we'll look into. I mean, it's Taqiyya, isn't it? Let's just say it, Taqiyya. Maybe we should talk about Taqiyya, because I think that's really interesting. I kind
People
of
keep using that word, and
I think
Muslims don't even know what that is. I think that word is used mostly by anyone who hates Islam.
I agree. I've never bought into this. I know of the concept of it, but I only ever hear it from people who are conspiratorial about Muslims. And
I've never heard that word being used by Muslims. I didn't even know what that was until people on Twitter started using it, and I googled it. I thought, oh, okay, so it's something to do with my lot. But I've never heard any of them say anything about this word. They've never even used it.
And it's not like the Islamists in the UK are shy and holding back, is it? Like, they're quite happy to tell you what they think about democracy and all the rest of it. They're not like, no, it's all fine, blood, and then stick the knife in you when you're not looking.
Yeah, it's funny how Majid is accused of, practicing Taqiyya or being a stealth jihadist, and you think, well, he must be really shit.
He's playing the long game, isn't he? He's playing
a really long game.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch in on?
Well, it'll be a while before our next Taking the Myth, because I don't know if people are aware, but there's a secular conference in July, 22nd, or is it 23rd? 23rd?
22nd and the 23rd, I believe.
And the 23rd, which I'm hosting. Yay!
So tell me what you're going to be doing there. I don't think I've spoke to you at length about it exactly. What is your function at this conference?
Well, I'm obviously going to turn up and look pretty.
Well, take that off.
Yeah. Well, basically, I'm going to be hosting it, so I'll be greeting everyone, introducing certain topics.
Are you nervous?
I am a little bit nervous because I've never really done something like this before, but I'm hoping the adrenaline will kick in before I have the urge to vomit. I get really bad stage fright. I get really, really bad stage fright, but I think if I had been actually talking on a particular topic, I would have been more scared. But I think because I'm just hosting it, I should be okay. And the rest of the time, I'll just be schmoozing and, working the room and all that.
Well, I shall be there, covering, press pass in hand, trying to sneak interviews with people. So we'll have to try and see if we can nail down an event Taking the Myth, even if we just do a quick one somewhere. Whilst we're there, get your takes.
Did you just say we're going to have a quickie at the conference?
That's not quite what I said, but I can imagine how that may have come across that way. No, I said maybe we could.
It will now.
Yeah, now I said it. This is our proposition, everyone, on a podcast.
Yeah,
we should probably not make jokes about sexual encounters at conventions. People are hell bent on making this a massive issue within atheist circles.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Also,
I got touched at the National Secular Society one, I'll be honest. Touched by the heartwarming speeches, Iram.
I see what you did there.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, also, I will have finished my trek in the mountains of Pakistan as well. So, but yeah, we'll have quite a lot, and hopefully. Won't be away for too long, but long enough for people to miss me.
Yes.
Definitely.
Inshallah.
Yes, inshallah.
All right, Iram, it's been awesome as well. And I genuinely mean this when I say I hope we have nothing to talk about next time we do this. We can just exchange racist jokes as we do when we're off air.
Yes. Oh, you've already already harmed my reputation as it is. Don't make it worse.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much for joining me.
No worries. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Taking the Myth, and thank you to my superb co-host Iram Ramzan. You can find Iram's writing and many of her wonderful contributors over at sedar.org. You can keep up to date on the podcast at gspellchecker.com. Think we've all learned something here today?